At the family reunion I paid for, they gave everyone a custom t-shirt. Mine said biggest disappointment. I didn't argue. I just smiled, took out a stack of papers, tore them in half, and left. An hour later, they finally read what I destroyed and started calling nonstop. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, that it hit me like a slap in the face. But honestly, it felt more like the final piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to convince myself didn't exist. I stood there, holding the t-shirt, staring at the bold black letters like they were written in permanent marker on my chest. Biggest disappointment. Nice. My sister Laura was already giggling. It's just a joke, Frankie. Ben gave me a lazy shrug from across the table, beer in one hand. Come on, man. You've got to admit, it's kind of funny. My parents. Silent at first. Then my mom let out this light chuckle, like someone had told a slightly inappropriate joke at a PTA meeting. My dad shook his head, smiling like I'd just tripped on a sidewalk. I nodded once. Then again, slower. Right. Funny. I folded the shirt neatly and set it on the edge of my plate. No one noticed that my hands were shaking just slightly, or if they did, they didn't care. I don't know what I expected. I paid for this entire reunion, venue, food, travel. I even paid for the matching shirts. That's the punchline, isn't it? They used my card to print that label. The joke. Hilarious. I'd spent months organizing this weekend. Reserved the old lakeside house they used to rave about, hoping, foolishly, that maybe nostalgia would soften things. Maybe I'd finally feel like part of something again. Instead, I got a printed confirmation of my place in the family. And the worst part, I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. Tired in the kind of way that sinks into your bones and settles there like cement. I pushed back my chair. Smiled. Be right back. Walked upstairs to the guest room. My room, technically, since I rented the entire property, and opened my bag. The folder was exactly where I left it. Thick. Crisp. Weighted. I'd had the papers printed on special parchment, something that felt significant to hold. Something they could keep. I'd even considered bringing champagne to go with the announcement. Instead, I walked back into the dining room and stopped just behind my empty chair. No one looked up. They were too busy posing for a group selfie in their new shirts. Perfect timing. I took out the folder, slid the papers from inside, and without saying a single word, I began tearing them in half. Slowly, deliberately, page by page. Laura turned first. Wait, what is that? Ben furrowed his brow. Dude, is that a contract? I didn't answer. My dad stood halfway. Frank. I set the torn papers down in front of my empty plate. Smiled again, tighter this time. Enjoy the shirts. Then I walked out. No yelling. No slammed doors. Just footsteps against the old wood floor, the creak of the screen door behind me, and the cool night air pressing against my skin like relief. I didn't even take my jacket. I didn't need it. I was halfway to the car when the first call came in. Then a second. Then 3 more. Like a dam cracking open. I didn't answer. Not yet. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before even turning the key, just staring at my hands on the wheel. Still calm. Still too calm. Like my body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. They laughed. That part kept looping in my head. My mom, my siblings, even my dad. Like it was all so harmless. Like calling me their biggest disappointment was just another cute little family quirk. Right up there with Laura's passive-aggressive holiday cards and Ben's jokes about me being single. But it wasn't harmless. And it wasn't new. I could trace it back to age 9. That was the year Ben broke the neighbor's window with a baseball, and I got grounded for not stopping him. Laura lied about failing a test, and I got a lecture about being a bad influence. Every mistake in that house somehow had my name attached to it, even if I wasn't in the room. At 12, I remember getting a C in math, my first. I cried, not because of the grade, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Dinner table sarcasm, mom's dramatic sigh, dad's quiet disappointment. Meanwhile, Ben could fail an entire semester and still get extra spending money for trying his best. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small student loan. Not even money, just a signature. They said no. Said I needed to learn responsibility. Ben wrecked 2 cars by then. Laura had already moved to Europe for a photography course they helped fund. But I needed to learn responsibility. So I worked nights. Slept 4 hours a day. Built something from nothing. A tech service at first, then a subscription platform. Learned how to code, how to pitch, how to get rejected and keep going. I didn't ask for much. A little credit would have been nice. Maybe a "we're proud of you." Instead, I became the running gag. The weird one. The guy who always showed up late to Thanksgiving because he was probably coding in a basement somewhere. When I got my first six-figure investment, I told no one. When I cleared my student debt in one lump sum, I told no one. When my company went viral, still no one. It felt like, if I told them, they'd just find a way to twist it, turn it into another joke. Or worse, take credit for it. So I kept quiet. But I watched. Watched Laura host parties in apartments I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. Watched Ben post cryptic Instagram captions about mental health, only to DM me for money 2 days later. Watched my parents struggle with their mortgage, but still buy anniversary cruises. And I started helping. Quietly. An anonymous donation here. An untraceable transfer there. Because despite everything, I still wanted to believe in family. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. That fantasy shattered last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone out to a ski lodge I rented. My mom told me to save my money, then posted a status about how Laura surprised them with a family-funded holiday. That was when I decided. No more behind the scenes. The reunion I just left. That was supposed to be my reveal. A real one. I had it all lined up. A notarized letter gifting my parents early retirement. Their mortgage wiped clean. A down payment agreement for Laura and her kids. A new start in a better school district. A debt relief fund for Ben, plus an optional job referral if he ever wanted to start fresh. Each document was signed, sealed, printed on heavy linen paper. I even picked navy blue folders to match the table decor. That's how far I went. I wanted it to be beautiful. Memorable. I imagined the look on my mother's face when she read the letter. The tears. The pride. The slow realization that the son she once called directionless had built something big enough to give them a second chance. I imagined my father standing up, speechless, shaking my hand. I imagined Laura saying, "I was wrong about you." Ben saying, "Damn, bro. I had no idea." I imagined so many things. What I got was a joke printed on a t-shirt. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it was just bad humor. Maybe they would have reacted differently if I'd told them first. But here's the thing, they knew. On some level, they always knew. They saw the car I drove, the clothes I wore, the way people reacted when I mentioned my company name. My mom once asked if I was doing okay financially, but in that careful, rehearsed way people do when they're fishing for confirmation without wanting to seem impressed. They just didn't care. Or worse, they did care, and they hated what it said about them. So they laughed. Because it was easier to keep me in the disappointment box than admit they might have been wrong about me. And now they were going to find out what I had in those papers. And not just them. Everyone. Everyone who ever heard them talk about poor Frank. Everyone who believed I was some failure drifting from one sad project to another. They were going to see the truth. But not before things got worse. Because I hadn't even seen the messages yet. The ones they were already sending. The lies they were already spinning. The story they were crafting before I could open my mouth. That came next. I didn't even make it back to the city before the story started spreading. First, a call from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey man, your sister just posted something weird. Said you had a breakdown at the family reunion? Everything okay?" Breakdown. That was the word she used. I opened Facebook and there it was, a photo of the table from earlier that night, shirts laid out, wine glasses full, a cake in the center, with a caption that read, "Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you, even when you self-sabotage." No names, no details, but it was clear who she meant. The comments were full of vague sympathy and cryptic takes. "So sorry, girl. You deserve peace. You did your best. Some people are just toxic. Family is complicated. Sending hugs. That would have been bad enough." Then came the group chat pings. Screenshots. Messages forwarded from cousins. My aunt asked if I was okay. Said my mother called her crying. Said I had thrown a tantrum and destroyed legal documents in some kind of manic episode. Ben texted me directly. "You seriously need help, man. You embarrassed everyone. We tried to include you, and you made it weird. Real classy. Include me?" Right. I didn't reply. Just forwarded the original documents to my attorney, asked him to timestamp the email, and CC'd my assistant. She replied 5 minutes later. Would you like me to move up the Forbes feature to this weekend? I can add the scanned pages back in. Yes, that. Because here's the thing. I had options. I had evidence. I had receipts. They had a story. A weak one. But the louder they told it, the more dangerous it became. If there's one thing my family knows how to do, it's rewrite history fast. And this time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had let them shape my narrative for too long. Now it was my turn. I started by sharing the Forbes link quietly. No tag, no commentary. Just the article. The underdog founder who secretly funded his family's life for a decade and then cut ties. Inside were photos of the documents. Scanned, signed, dated. The same ones I'd torn up at the reunion. The article mentioned the company valuation, north of $30 million, and the anonymous donations traced back to me. It mentioned the mortgage payments, the college funds I'd quietly created under shell accounts. It mentioned the tech mentorship grant I launched 6 months ago for people who'd been written off by their own families. And it mentioned, briefly but clearly, why I walked away. Not with bitterness. With clarity. Within hours, my inbox exploded. First were the congratulations. Then the apologies. Then the panic. A voicemail from Laura. Why would you make that public? You're humiliating us. Text from Ben. Wow. Real mature. Hope you feel good about ruining the family name. Then my mom. We need to talk. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun. Misunderstood. A joke. It was almost funny, the way they were doubling down. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because the story was gaining traction. And the spotlight I never wanted? It was about to get a lot brighter. A YouTube channel picked it up. Then a podcast. Then a short documentary. Comments flooded in. People chose sides. But mostly, they chose me. Because people recognize humiliation when they see it. Especially when it wears a smile and calls itself family. Ben tried to clap back online. Posted a rant about me being unstable. Said I was twisting facts. Someone responded with a screenshot of the contract I'd written for him. Annotated. With dates. Someone else found an old tweet where Laura joked about being the golden child. Not so funny now. A tech influencer I didn't even know shared the Forbes article with the caption. Let this be a reminder. Not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in sweaters. They thought they could smear me. Discredit me. Make me look like the problem. Instead, they ended up exposed. And still, I hadn't said a word publicly. Not once. Because I didn't have to. I had something better than a rebuttal. I had receipts. And now, I had the world watching. You'd think after the article, after the messages, after the public unraveling of their favorite story, they'd back off. They didn't. If anything, they doubled down. Ben posted a long thread about how I was exaggerating for sympathy. He said I had a history of being dramatic. Said I was always the one who felt left out, even when they tried their best. Laura started damage control with extended family. She told them I wasn't well, that the money had gone to my head, that I'd cut ties not because of a t-shirt, but because I was always looking for a reason to leave. And my parents, they stayed quiet publicly, but I know they were calling around, framing it as a misunderstanding, a sad situation. He just took things the wrong way. I watched them try to rebuild their version of the story. But this time, it wasn't sticking, because the people they were talking to, a lot of them had already reached out to me, quietly. A cousin who said she always noticed how I was treated differently. A former neighbor who remembered hearing my mom call me a late bloomer, while bragging about Ben's internship at a company I now owned equity in. The part that hit hardest wasn't their spin. It was the realization that I had spent so long hoping they'd change, I didn't notice how much I had. I was no longer the kid trying to earn a seat at their table. I had my own table now. And the silence that followed that realization? It was the first time I felt peace in years. They sent a letter. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Just a carefully worded, "We're still your family, and we love you, and we hope you can move past this." Move past it. Like it was a phase. Like I got offended and stormed off, and needed to come back once I'd cooled down. I didn't reply. A week later, they sent another. This one was longer. More emotional. Talked about the things they'd done for me when I was younger. Meals. Rides. A roof over my head. Like that made up for everything. They never mentioned the money. Or the years of jokes. Or how quick they were to smear me when I finally said no. Then, out of nowhere, Ben posted an old photo of us. From when we were kids. Captioned it, "Miss my brother." Still love him. Always will. I got tagged. A lot. People wanted a response. But the only people I owed anything to were the ones who were there when I had nothing. And none of those people were wearing matching t-shirts. So I stayed quiet. And in that silence, things kept shifting. Laura's husband left. She'd been leaning hard into the "we're victims of cancel culture" narrative, and he wasn't having it. He took the kids. Moved in with his sister. I found out from someone else. Laura didn't tell me herself. Ben lost a speaking gig at some small event he'd booked himself into. Apparently, someone had sent the organizer the full article, along with a comment he made in an old podcast about how his brother could never finish anything he started. My parents tried to refinance their home. Didn't go through. A friend of mine who works in finance said the bank saw instability. Not my doing. Not directly. But I stopped the monthly transfer. That part was my doing. And I started living my life. Not out of revenge. Just finally freely. I traveled without checking my phone every few hours. I made decisions without wondering if they'd finally be proud. I built things because I wanted to, not because I was trying to prove anything. And one night, a while later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize. Just one line. "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." That one got to me. Not because I needed the praise, but because it reminded me that walking away wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Survival, not spite. I was never angry they didn't love me the way I wanted. I was angry they pretended they did while cutting me down every time I stood up straighter. That night, I opened a box I'd forgotten about. It had copies of the original documents. The ones I tore up. I ran my hand over the paper. Thick. Cream-colored. Still sharp at the edges where I'd ripped the first set. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like closure. I don't know where they are now. I don't check. Sometimes people send me updates, but I delete them before I finish reading. I don't need to know. Not because I don't care, but because the version of me who needed their approval doesn't live here anymore. He's gone, and he's not coming back. Update, 2 years later. It's been a while. I got invited to a wedding recently. Not family. A friend. One of the few who saw the worst and stuck around. At the reception, someone introduced me to their cousin. She smiled, shook my hand, and said, "Wait, are you the t-shirt guy?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Guess I am." She told me she cut off her own parents last year. Said my story gave her the push she needed. I didn't know what to say. I still don't really. But it stuck with me. Because for so long, I thought leaving meant losing. Giving up. Surrendering. Turns out, it was the first time I ever stood up for myself. Sometimes I wonder if they still talk about me. If they tell the story differently now. If they miss me, or just miss who they could control. I don't reach out. And they haven't either. Not in a long time. Maybe that says everything. Do you think I went too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. If you want more stories like this, subscribe.